What if the government takes your stuff after you've been arrested? We call that a civil forfeiture. You're going to feel like you've been violated because you might have possessed a couple $100s worth of weed, and there might have been a gun in the car, and your $50,000 car is now sitting on a police department lot, and they are asking a judge to forfeit that. They want to take your car in its entirety. Like, there's no proportionality here between what the car is worth and what the crime is. We see this a lot with fleeing and attempting to elude cases. You might have had a $30,000 motorcycle, but if you didn't obey the little lights in the back where the cop turned them on, they want to take your motorcycle as part of that little traffic felony that they've arrested you for. I want to talk to you about this recent case of, it is Culley versus Marshall. And Culley versus Marshall went all the way up to the Supreme Court recently. And this is a little rant. Now, look, Culley loaned her car to her son. Her son had some weed in the car and a gun in the car, and they took mom's car and said, we ain't giving it back. We're forfeiting this car. Mom wanted a hearing on whether they can hold this car for weeks and months while the government decides, while it goes through the court system of a forfeiture hearing. Now, I don't want to talk about this Supreme Court case in that sense. For you folks out there who are subject to forfeiture hearings, these things suck for you, and the government has all the power, and you have very little power. Not only does the government have all the power, but they took all your money in the car, they took your car, they took everything, and now they're like, oh, just go ahead and try to fight us on this, right? I like what Supreme Court Justice Gorsuch said about these forfeiture hearings, and I'm giving you this video because I want to tell you where I hope things go with forfeiture, because I think forfeiture is just completely unfair 99% of the time, right? But here's what Gorsuch says about forfeiture. I'm just going to read these quotes. They are great. In this nation, the right to a jury trial before the government may take life, liberty, or property has always been our rule. Yet some exceptions exist. But perhaps it is past time for this court, the United States Supreme Court, to examine more fully whether and to what degree contemporary civil forfeiture practices align with that rule and that exception. Gorsuch is kind of leaning towards, we might need to get rid of these forfeitures. And we do, to a very large extent. I understand when you are like a Carlos Escobar and you have 14 houses on the beach and you have 85 Lamborghinis and boatloads of money. I understand forfeiture. I don't understand forfeiture for, Kurt Culley in this case, where she's a mom and her son gets caught with a little weed and a gun, and now mom loses her car and the loan and whatever else is going on with that case. Gorsuch also says, in future cases, with the benefit of full briefing, I hope we might begin the task of assessing how well the profound changes in civil forfeiture practices we have witnessed in recent decades comport with the Constitution's guarantee, right? A guarantee that no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, right? Just a lot of good quotes from Gorsuch about how potentially bad these new forfeiture laws are. And it's like they're picking on the poor people. All you got is a car, all you got is a little bit of money, and they just take it because what? You fled from the cops for 2 minutes, right? And he says, why does a nation so jealous of its liberties tolerate expansive new civil forfeiture practices that have led to egregious and well-chronicled abuses? Amen. Perhaps it has something to do with the relative lack of power of those on whom the system preys. Amen. Perhaps the government agencies' increasing dependence on forfeiture as a source for revenue is an important piece to this puzzle. Look, Gorsuch and many other justices said the law on forfeiture is the law, and unfortunately, in the case that they just handed down on Culley, they said, well, it was legal for them to not give mom a hearing up front to determine whether the government could hold her car. But Gorsuch is right. We have to reevaluate these forfeiture statutes. We have to consider that they have gone too far. They have really gone too far, and they are now preying on people that can't afford to fight the government in civil court. It's just that simple.